In Russia, 4 years into its war against Ukraine, street protests have become more frequent. This observation was shared by the Telegram channel Mozem Obishenia, affiliated with former businessman Mikhail Khodorkovsky. As one example of such actions, the authors of the publication cite musicians forming songs by foreign agents in support of the band Stoptime, whose members, lead singer Diana Loginova, Naoko, her fiancé, guitarist Alexander Orekhov, and percussionist Vladislav Leontyev are suffering from so-called carousel arrests, that is, extensions of prison terms without the initiation of criminal proceedings. Other examples of protests include demonstrations against increased recycling fees in Vladivostok, Novosibirsk, and Kamchatka, rallies against the state-run messaging app Max in Voronezh, Omsk, Novosibirsk, and Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, protests against wage arrears for contractors working at the Primorskaya State District Power Plant in Luchegorsk, demands from residents of the Kursk region for compensation for homes destroyed by military action, and even an anti-war picket in Perm, organized in February by members of Ekaterina Duntsova's unregistered Rassvet party. At the same time, according to a Telegram channel, an increasing number of Russians are reading books by writers labeled foreign agents and terrorists in protest against government policies. This literature is published by foreign publishers and then brought to Russia through means beyond the control of the authorities. The Post states, while the Kremlin paints a picture of stability and assures that the country is united, sociology shows quite the opposite. People are tired of war. Pacifist sentiment is growing. Young people are leaving the sovereign internet en masse, and aggression is accumulating in society, which is reflected in court statistics. Rallies and protests in Russia over various issues and in different parts of the country have ceased to be something extraordinary. Not long ago, a handful of people protesting on the central square of a provincial town would have attracted widespread attention and been covered in the national news. But rallies and protests are now occurring with increasing frequency, primarily because Russians no longer care if the authorities refuse to sanction a given gathering, making it and participation in it illegal. Indeed, protesters are becoming radicalized. They now refuse to buckle under pressure, and they are willing to take to the streets over issues as non-political as the environment and as local as the construction of a cathedral. Unable to suppress the protests using force, the authorities have met these displays of mass dissent with confusion and attempted to accommodate protesters, sometimes meeting their demands. The federal government has mistaken the symbolic reasons for these protests for the real drivers of unrest in the country, and accordingly focused its energies on tackling them, signaling a willingness to talk, be it on cathedrals or landfill sites. The general discontent of Russians remains unacknowledged, with Moscow finding it more convenient to believe that its token concessions will quell the protests. But these will only temporarily relieve tensions. Meanwhile, Russians will grow more and more courageous.
Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters Friday that Moscow has not officially received the 28-point U.S. peace plan for Ukraine. According to Associated Press, President Donald Trump's plan for ending the fighting in Ukraine would cede land to Russia, call on Ukraine to avoid joining NATO and limit the size of Kiev's military, according to a draft obtained Thursday by the Associated Press. The proposal, originating from negotiations between Washington and Moscow, appeared decidedly favorable to Russia, which started its military operation nearly 4 years ago. We know about the existence of potential modifications and approved wording, but officially, we haven't received anything, Peskov said. He said U.S.-Russian diplomatic contacts are ongoing, but nothing substantive is currently being discussed, adding that Russia is learning of some edits from press reports. Peskov said that Russia's continued offensives aim at forcing Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky toward a peaceful resolution of the issue, claiming that prolonging the conflict would be senseless and dangerous for Kiev.
Российская сторона остается на платформе тех обсуждений, которые состоялись в Анкоридже. Мы знаем о наличии возможных модификаций и одобренных формулировок, но официально мы ничего не получали. Более того, что-то мы узнаем из прессы. Хотя контакты наши не прекращаются, и мы их никогда не прекращаем. Есть определенные соображения американской стороны, но предметно в настоящий момент ничего не обсуждается. Эффективная работа вооруженных сил Российской Федерации должна убедить Зеленского и его режим, что лучше договариваться и делать это сейчас. И лучше делать это именно сейчас, чем потом. Пространство для свободы принятия решений для него сокращается по мере утраты территории в ходе наступательных действий российских вооруженных сил. Это именно принуждение Зеленского и его режима к мирному решению вопроса. Продолжение для них бессмысленно и опасно.
A strange situation has developed in the Kupiansk sector of the Kharkiv region, or more precisely, in the immediate vicinity and in the city of Kupiansk itself. This has attracted the attention of Russian military correspondents and military-related public groups monitoring the changing operational situation, analyzing open sources, and gathering information from the area. For example, military correspondent Yuri Kotenok noted in his Telegram channel that a significant discrepancy has long been known between the actual situation in Kupiansk and the data presented in reports to higher authorities, and even in the media. In particular, a telling factor was the fact that until recently there had been an unspoken taboo in the federal media regarding the battles directly surrounding Kupiansk. The reputable offices represented by the federal channels simply couldn't tolerate such disinformation. Colleagues from Rybar drew attention to something that was immediately obvious, or rather completely unobtrusive: the complete lack of visual monitoring of the fighting in the city. The military correspondent noted. Kotenok pointed out that at best, certain servicemen posing as commanders of assault units of the Russian armed forces reported from closed rooms without a location about the liberation of some buildings in Kupiansk and advancement. However, there was no real confirmation of this. More precisely, I remember one or two videos from the empty streets of Kupiansk where a lone daredevil unfurled a Russian flag and waved it at a drone, apparently for reporting purposes. They billed it as a liberation, but in reality, this is what's now called flag bashing for the sake of superiors to petition for an award. Incidentally, the enemy commented on similar videos, claiming to have killed the brave men with flags after recording the videos. But that's secondary, because you can't trust the enemy. You need to trust the facts. Talking about the real situation wasn't accepted. After all, it wasn't far from discrediting yourself. But the fact remains, in the 1st Tank Army operation in Kupiansk, communication was exactly like that, one-sided, without confirmation. And the information corresponded, Kotenok added. After this, the war correspondent wondered whether the situation at the top was known, and immediately expressed hope that they were aware of what was happening on the ground and would take appropriate action. Mistakes are allowed, but lies are not. Will action be taken? It's a good question, because in the past it happened that people got away with it for months, if not years, and the lies flowed to the very top, with cheerful reports of the enemy being encircled in the city, thus setting up the president, Kotenok concluded. Earlier, the Telegram channel Rybar informed the public with the article "Don't Say Hop" that for some time now, several Russian federal media outlets have been publishing reports from the Kupiansk direction, each more victorious than the last. The footage shows people in clean camouflage reading from a piece of paper from basements about large-scale successes and the clearing of key enemy points. However, the majority of such reports are not only far from reality, but also played into the hands of the enemy, who refuted them with footage of objective control and received a portion of the anti-crisis he so desperately needed, Telegram channel Rybar reported in a post. Following this, a list of the discrepancies identified was provided, accompanied by numerous links to relevant materials. For example, announcements appeared in the media about Russian armed forces units advancing in Sadavoy, the clearing of Kupiansk-Uzlovoy, and an ongoing clearing operation in Kurilovka. Several stations on the eastern bank of Kupiansk were also declared liberated or being cleared of the enemy. Just today, unsubstantiated claims emerged about the demining of the village of Kolontayevka, which indirectly refutes the advance to Sadavoy, officially liberated on October the 30th, especially since Russian drone operators have since documented the burning of several enemy armored vehicles there. The claimed successes in the bridgehead, where heavy fighting is actually continuing, are partially refuted by official footage of the destruction of the Ukrainian Armed Forces command post in Peschan. The question of how the cleansing of Kurilovka and the aforementioned Kupiansk-Uzlovoy, announced by masked men, can proceed is left unanswered. The analysis clarified. It was added that recently, footage of Ukrainian armed forces personnel moving through the grounds of a dairy canning plant in Kupiansk appeared on Ukrainian media outlets. A review by the Telegram channel Rybar explains that the Ukrainian videos may be archival, but there is no objective evidence from the Russian side to refute them. This is precisely what allows Ukrainian propaganda to talk about the Russian armed forces being driven out of Kupiansk, raising audience morale amid a multitude of problems. As a negative example of this deception, a link was provided to a material stating that during the Russian armed forces withdrawal from the eastern Kharkiv region in 2022, Balakleya was within the area of responsibility of the 11th Army, whose chief of staff at the time was the later arrested commander of the 58th Army, General Ivan Popov.